Welcome to Al Bernstein Unplugged Unboxing. In a 40-year Hall of Fame career, Al has chronicled some of the greatest moments in boxing history. On this podcast, you get to hear him expand on those memories and talk about the current news in the sport of boxing. You also hear Al interview some of the biggest names in the sport. Here's Al Bernstein Unplugged.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I am so glad you joined us. We have a couple of interesting guests for you today. First, our main guest is going to be Derrick James, the fine trainer of Errol Spence, who, of course, is going in this weekend against Danny Garcia to defend his welterweight titles. And also talking about that fight, we're going to have a little snippet of time with Lennox Lewis, who'll be broadcasting that fight. And that's a forerunner to a longer interview that you'll get to see with Lennox Lewis down the road here. Derrick is a gentleman that I've been anxious to talk to for some time. He's a terrific trainer, former trainer of the year, and he is a man who has only two clients, Jermell Charlo and Errol Spence, but he has made the most of that because they are both fantastic fighters and champions as well. We're also going to answer your questions, of course, and for that and much more, let me bring in my co-host, Mr. Trip Mitchell. Hey, Trip, how are you?
I am doing great. And when did the UK all of a sudden get the patent on having great heavyweights? What happened?
Yeah, it started, of course, the great Lennox Lewis was the first one to do it. And then in recent years, they've dominated the division, for a while it was dominated by Eastern Europeans, including the Klitschkos. And then now the Brits are creating lots of great heavyweights. And we saw one of them in action this past weekend, Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois, young man who they battled it out. And of course, there's Fury and Joshua and Dillian White. And so there's lots of good British heavyweights that have created excitement. And now that's where you look for the top heavyweights.
Are you one of the boxing experts who feel that in order for boxing to make a big comeback in this sport and reach its levels that it reached in the 50s and 60s, we need an American undisputed heavyweight champion? Well,
in America, we like big things, right? We like big cars, everything else that's big. And so heavyweights have a special place here. And of course, Deontay Wilder has been a heavyweight champion and helped create those exciting fights with Tyson Fury. So that helped, I think, make a lot of this heavyweight excitement here in the U.S. I don't think it's mandatory, but I think it's great for boxing in America when you have Americans that are certainly competitive in the heavyweight division and play an important role. And Wilder has done that. And now, on top of everything else, he's a very controversial figure because of his behavior after the Fury fight. But nowadays, controversy is almost always good, isn't it? There's no such thing as bad publicity, they say. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But the heavyweight division, certainly a healthy heavyweight division in general in boxing is good.
Fantastic. Well, we've got some good questions. You want to get to a couple?
Yeah, let's do a few.
Okay. Andy writes, how do you see the Canelo Charlo going down and who wins?
Yeah, that, of course, Canelo Alvarez and Jermell Charlo, a fight that many boxing fans want to see. Now, to talk about that, you have to talk first about the fight that Canelo is going to have on December 19th against Callum Smith, 168-pound champion. And that is no gimme. Callum Smith at age 30, 27-0, who holds the WBA version of the 168-pound title, is an excellent fighter. There is a rematch clause involved in that. So if by some chance Callum Smith should win that fight, they would have a rematch. So that would push back the idea of a Canelo fight with Jermell Charlo. certainly Canelo's the favorite in the Callum Smith fight, and many people expect him to win. But again, it is no given. Smith is an excellent fighter. Should Canelo get past him, I think all boxing fans really would like to see that matchup of Canelo and Jermell Charlo. Now, Charlo is fighting at a lower weight class than Canelo is currently campaigning at. Charlo is the middleweight champion and just recently defended that title in a terrific effort against Sergey Derevyanchenko in what was a unanimous decision and a really good effort by Charlo, made all the better by the fact that Derevyanchenko fought very well also in that fight. So it was more of a credit to Charlo that he won it. They could fight at a catch weight, like 164 pounds, or Charlo could move up to fight at 168. I think boxing fans really want to see that, and I'm sure on their Christmas wish list of fights involving Canelo, I'm sure that one's at the top of the list.
Fantastic. Nigel Hines writes, after Joe Joyce's win against the heavily favored Daniel Dubois, how and what do you see Joyce achieving? Can he beat Ruiz or Ortiz?
Yeah, Joe Joyce's win over Dubois was an interesting one because he won with a thunderous jab and a rock-hard chin. Dubois, who's a good punching heavyweight, hit him with some bombs, and Joe Joyce didn't flinch. Now, Joe Joyce is in an interesting situation. He's 35 years of age, and the reason he's so far advanced, relatively quick or in a short period in his pro career, he's 11-0, is because he had a long amateur career, and that included winning the silver medal at the 2016 Olympic Games. So he got a late start as a professional. And at this point, at age 35, his biological clock is ticking, even for heavyweights. And of course, they go longer and tend to mature at a later date and are often excellent in their mid-30s, as he is right now. I think those fights that were mentioned, the idea of him taking on Andy Ruiz, who, of course, beat Anthony Joshua and then lost to Joshua, Luis Ortiz, a perennial heavyweight contender, or the other interesting fight against Usyk, who would be the former cruiserweight champion, who, of course, is campaigning as a heavyweight. And I like that fight a lot. That would be my favorite choice for Joe Joyce. And that's maybe a fight that could be made. I think that would be really intriguing because it would tell us a lot about both men if they fought each other. I don't know that Usyk could hurt him because, again, Joyce has that amazing chin, but it would be a fascinating boxing match, to be sure. So that's one I would actually like to see him engage in.
Okay, and one more question. This coming from the best name we've had so far, First and Felony. Which active fighter not named Manny Pacquiao has the best resume to get into the Hall of Fame?
That's intriguing. My answer might surprise some people, but I'll tell you, when I think of, there's two fighters I think of with resumes, but I'm going to mention one of them. One is Abner Mares, who we had on as a guest, and Abner is probably right on that Hall of Fame bubble. He fought amazing competition, and really around the same time as the gentleman I'm going to mention, and that is Carl Froch. Now, Carl Froch went through his career and had only 2 losses to Andre Ward and to Mikkel Kessler, though he also beat Kessler in one of their fights. Carl Froch, for a 3 or 4 year period in his career, fought maybe the hardest competition that you can even imagine. He fought Arthur Abraham. He fought Jean Pascal. He fought Jermaine Taylor. He fought Mikkel Kessler. He fought Andre Ward. He fought Glenn Johnson, former light heavyweight champion. That was an amazing murderer's row of people. And Andre Durrell. I forgot about Andre Durrell. That's an amazing group of people to fight back to back to back to back. And then later on had his 2-fight series with George Groves. So in terms of difficulty of schedule, very few fighters can match up with Carl Froch. And I believe that while some people may say, well, Carl Froch wasn't the greatest stylist in the world, and there might be some nitpicking going on, let me tell you, he was a terrific 168-pounder, and I think deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So we'll see how that goes. A man who probably might end up in the Hall of Fame someday as a trainer is Derrick James. He is really one of the best in boxing right now, if not the best. Training Errol Spence and also Jermell Charlo. And, of course, Errol Spence will be in action this weekend, taking on Danny Garcia, and Derrick will be there in his corner. And Derrick, to me, is a fascinating guy. You know, he devotes his time to only 2 fighters, and we talk about that in the interview. And he feels like while other trainers may be effective spreading their time, he doesn't feel like he wants to do that. And he feels like he needs to concentrate on his 2 main guys. And that is what he has done, and he has done a spectacular job of it. Here's our conversation with Derrick James. Derrick, you are, first of all, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. You are one of the people in boxing now who is sitting in maybe one of the best spots of any trainer in the sport. You are the trainer of 2 terrific champions, and you've been on a roll the last several years. When you started training and you began with Errol Spence when he was an amateur, did you allow your mind to kind of go to the place where you're at right now?
No, I didn't. I think that my whole thing is just to stay in the moment. I mean, I think that you can't get to the other place if you can't focus on what's in front of you. And I just focused on what was in front of me, from him winning national titles to the Olympics. But then when I could say that when I got into the professional sport, I did say that I want to. You got to go out and be the best. You got to say you want to be the best, right? Because the only way you can be able to compete with these guys who are very established, like John David Jackson, like Ronnie Shields, Freddie Roach, you have to be able to know that you belong in this particular place. And, you have to, you take the fan jersey off, right? And when you get to the big leagues, take it off. So and now you go from a fan's perspective to you're competing against those guys, and that's what it was.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is you've taken a unique approach, one that not everybody takes. You have you started out with Errol Spence and stayed with him, and he was almost your exclusive client, really. You're
right.
The guy you trained. You devoted everything to him, and you while you've added Jermell Charlo, and that's been a terrific partnership for you as well. Unlike many trainers, you didn't add a lot of fighters, and I know that was by design, right?
Right. Yeah, without a doubt, I think that, first of all, I know that I'm not the answer to everybody, right? I mean, I think that when I think that we attain certain levels of success, we believe so. When we start to believe the things that people say about us to us, how great we really are, what we can really do. And I think they go to the dollar signs or whatever, not to, because this is a business. But I think for me, it's like, if you focus on the guys that you have in front of you, I mean, when you start to get so many guys, you water it down, just like anything. I mean, you can't spread yourself out too thin. I still work a full-time job. I still have family, so I have wife and daughters. And at the same time, I still have my guys that I truly commit myself to. And for me to bring on 4, 5, 6 guys is taking a line to Errol and a line to Jermell, when initially that's what I was to them, was what their trainer. But when I spread myself out, it's the relationship that I truly have with them, the love I have for them. I still may have it, but it's like I'm chasing something else. And I want to be able to be focused, and so I don't want a big team. I never did. And that's not to say that other people shouldn't do it. I think that I think that for me, we have emotional relationships also. It's hard to read these guys and understand these guys and understand their desires, when you have 10, 12, 15 guys, you can't be what those guys truly need. And that's where I draw the line. It's like I really want to be what my guys really need and to be able to think about them and focus on them exclusively instead of spreading it out so much.
Yeah, it is possible. And to be frank, there have been cases where trainers have kind of spread themselves thin and it's created issues with the relationships. So your way, and as you point out, it doesn't mean it's not appropriate or won't work for some trainers, but
just not for me.
Yeah, and it's there have been problems in the past for people. You have two uniquely different situations in that you started with, of course, Errol Spence when he was a young amateur, and developed him as a professional after meeting with him and his dad in amateur tournaments. And then for your other fighter, Jermell Charlo, you got him midstream in his career. What are the differences in those two things? How does your approach to training change when you have those two different situations?
I think that sometimes it's so similar because I think that when they come to you, you have to initially break the bad habits, and you always have to be conscious of teaching. I mean, one guy who I've been with for 11 years, it's not so much about teaching as it is reinforcement, right? Mm-hmm. But with Jermell, even though we've been together for like 4 or 5 years, I think, and 3 years, 4 years, it's still just about still constantly teaching and teaching. And so you just always have to be cognizant of the fact that you're teaching and not working them out, because I think that working them out can get them in shape, but they look good on the mitts, right? But other than that, when they're in the fight, they throw 10 punches or whatever, the case may be. I think, but when you're teaching, they understand it, because I teach to where they self-correct during the fight. So I say that guy didn't hit you because he's so great. It was something that you did to enable that situation to happen. And so they are self-correcting at the same time, because my voice may not be able to carry in through the ring of the fight, so they have to be able to do it right then and there. And then we can do what I do in the corner.
Yeah, interesting. Your journey with Jermell Charlo had, we're going to talk about the fight coming up with Errol and Danny Garcia. Your journey with Jermell Charlo has been really an interesting one, because in truth, you don't see too many fighters who literally seem to transform themselves into something somewhat different. And that's what you've done with Jermell Charlo. You've made him into quite a beast in the 154-pound division. He certainly was a fine fighter before, but he's become a more powerful puncher, a more dominant force. It's been an interesting transition that you've created.
I think that it's because of love, man. It's because of love. When you love the guy and you're able to give him to be what he needs, and you kind of can see what he needs personally, and then you build from there.
You think it's more than just the technique? It's a lot about the feeling that goes into it.
It's love. I think that it's like that's what it's the technique, but you have to understand like the ability to be able to take that and take it in, right? Is respect and love, because he has to respect me. For Jermell, he has to respect me and love me to know that I'm not giving him some false information. And he's like, man, he's a phenomenal student. Like I'm telling you, like he and Errol are phenomenal. Like Jermell's like, Coach, I'm gonna get it. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna get it. And see, they know that regardless of whatever, I'm not forgetting about what. If something I think that's significant to him, I'm gonna keep talking to him about it, never drilling to him. It's all about the conversation. Jermell is not a guy that likes to be yelled at, so you have to talk to him. And like if I'm telling him something and telling him something he's not getting it, it's not him, it's me. I have to find a way to repackage it, say it in a different way, show it to him, in whatever, just for him to get it, because it's not him, it's my communication skills that I have to expand just to get it across to him. So, but it's understanding like his that he doesn't like to be yelled at, and you know what I mean. So you have to know that when you yell at Jermell, he shuts down. I'm like no,
interesting.
Shut down. So I mean, but if I had 10 guys, I can never connect with him like that. Understand that, right? Just like with Errol, Errol, they're so similar because they want to be what I want them to be. Like, I mean, even Errol, the other day I called him, it was last night, and I'm like, man, and it's like 11 something. Normally I'm asleep. And so I'm telling him, like, I like the way you were doing this, you were doing that yesterday. He said, man, he said, why are you calling me now? I said, because I didn't want to talk to you about it today. I want to tell you about it the same day. He said, so you saying this it's 12 o'clock and that's what you think about? I said, I never stopped thinking about y'all because that's my job to be able to perfect what we're doing, right? So he was like, man, it's 12 o'clock. What you think? Like, that's what it is, man. Like, even with, I'm thinking about my guys because it's very important. It's very the relationships and the trust and the understanding of it, is very important because if you think about this, if he's going to war and you didn't trust the guy who's next to him in the war, how can he perform to his best of his ability? Right? I mean, and that's really what I see, and that's how I think that he was able to do what he did to Rosario, right? Because of that.
Was that the most amazing thing? That was one of the more amazing things I've seen in announcing boxing. The idea that jab to the body could knock him down like that and create that much damage.
Well, you know what? It was because I think that it was accumulation of punches, right?
Yeah.
Over time, good shots. I mean, like, what's funny about it is everything we worked on worked. I mean, it was like the wider shots, which they seem like, if you think about it, they were wider shots, right? Because the defense was so tight. And the only way you get him to open up the defense was to start blocking the shots on the side.
Right.
Right? And so if you think about the first knockdown was a wider shot to the top, right behind the guard. It knocked him down, I think, the first round or the second round. So see, but then you keep throwing those, I said, keep throwing those wide shots because he's going to keep doing this. The second knockdown was the shot where he threw it. So he didn't throw it wide, he threw it short because the guy was going, he did that, he caught him on the chin like that. See, so the difference is you made him think about the shots because you keep throwing those shots, he's going to be like, okay, I'm going to block it because he's smarter than you. I'm smart. The next shot is going to be, he did that, and Jermell cut it short, caught him on the chin, that was the second knockdown. So it was really like accumulation of punches and but that guy he was tough, man, I'm telling you. But what happened was funny, in camp, we had a perfect training camp. We had a perfect training camp to where we could, because the last training camp, we were all over the place, back and forth. But this camp was like, I was able to keep teaching and teach him how to tie him up, teach him how to break his rhythm, teach him how to not let him get set to punch. Like, he had to keep resetting, which was kind of like the strategy and game plan to that. And it worked perfectly.
That was an amazing performance. And you did have him ready to fight the perfect fight at the biggest moment of his career. I mean,
right.
It was to unify the titles and everything. So you, as someone that's won the Trainer of the Year award, and certainly in the conversation again this year, as you probably will be for a number of different years, your focus is on the fighters. And you kind of demonstrated that with that story you told about, calling him in the middle of the night to make a comment because he's on your mind. So your focus is on the fighters. And yet clearly you, as a trainer, have gotten some, accolades, and you've certainly gotten your just due, I think, from people who understand you're very good at this. How rewarding is that for you?
I think it's very rewarding. I think it's very rewarding, but even more, it's more rewarding to help young men change their lives, change their families' lives. I mean, like Jermell, the wealthy guys, a crew, Errol's mother and father, retired his mother and father. That's all from the work that he and I do. I mean, I think that's even more beautiful, that his kids will grow up a certain way, my kids will grow up a certain way, because people, like, growing up, you say this is for them or this is for that person. But his kids will never say, that's not for me. Or my kids will never say, that's not for me. So I think that you change that's the part of it that's more gratifying. Now, me, I have to say, I like winning awards, right? But that's not what I'm here to do. My job is to make sure my guys keep winning, and I can't get caught up or consumed on me winning. Listen, what I wanted with Trainer of the Year, oh man, without a doubt. Yeah. But at the same time, that can't be my main focus. Because even though it could be at the back of my mind, but I don't let that thought peek in there, because at that point, it becomes a selfish situation other than what I'm really there for. So it's not here for me, because I can win Trainer of the Year. My guys look horrible. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean? So it's like I have to keep my guys looking good. I mean, and we're going into a really tough fight right now in Danny Garcia, so we have to be focused on 100%. I can't be focused on the prize at the end, because we have to deal with the situation right in front of me.
Let's talk about this fight coming up. The first thing I want to ask you about is, how did you know during the course of training, and at what point did you kind of realize that Errol was going to be able to function on a high level, after all his rehab from the auto accident and the tragedy and trauma of that? When did you understand that he was going to be able to function at this high level?
I once he started and got rolling, and I would, because like I'm moving to get him to move or to react a certain particular way. And so from doing that, I saw that. But then when he started sparring, and really like the first day, the second day, but then with each day, it just keeps building and building and building. I remember he sparring a big kid, Burley Brooks, that I trained. He's like 180 pounds at the time. And I teach rotation. That's where the power comes from. So Burley hits him with a boom, straight right hand down the pipe, boom. And there's no reaction. He didn't wobble. Then Burley says, because he doesn't land a lot of shots. So he landed that shot, like, man, so he shoots the shot again, boom. Like within 2-3 seconds, boom. So he got hit with a shot on the button, then right, boom. So when you see that, he blocks the next punch. And he's like, he's there. He took a good shot. And he's there, and you want to see that, right? Because it's like that's amazing. When you know he's right and he's thinking, and like he can take a good shot.
That's intriguing. Danny Garcia is a fighter who is consistently underestimated in many respects in boxing. Yeah, it's interesting. And I've probably been guilty of that, even in approaching fights. I mean, I try never to have a preconceived notion anyway, but sometimes you allow yourself to think, oh, he's this or he's that, when in reality he's more than that. Is that a fair assessment of Danny Garcia?
Without a doubt, I think that he's always the consummate underdog, right? And he accepts that role. He wears it with honor. And I think that for him, you have to come in, you have to be 1,000% ready. You can't not think because he's this or he's that. I mean, listen, he has 2 questionable losses. I mean, and like this is what I'll say, which you know this. He has, other than Manny Pacquiao, he had the best resume in boxing.
It's a very good point.
Think about like Kendall Holt. I mean, think about Kendall Holt, Nate Jones. I mean, like Mauricio Herrera. I mean, look at all these. I mean, and then when you look at these guys, Zab Judah, Amir Khan, Lamont Peterson. I mean, listen, he didn't only beat former champs, but he beat future Hall of Famers, right? And that's the thing about it that is, and especially no other welterweight resume can even hold up to that, because he started to fight Eric Morales. I mean, so you think about these things, and these are steps. Lucas Matisse. I mean, who thought he was going to win that fight?
No, I mean, you're right. Very few. A lot of people did not.
You know what I mean? Like, listen, I mean, like, so when you think about it, like, he's a guy who always steps up. I mean, he's an overachiever. You cannot. And so the thing about it is, you cannot go in there and count him out, because, hey man, he shows up all the time.
Errol is, of course, a terrific aggressive fighter. He's a good volume puncher, tremendous body puncher, and has lots of power. Danny Garcia is more of a counter puncher. What kind of aggression does Errol need in this fight to be effective?
I think that there has to be like 2 or 3 different phases in the fight. I think that there has to be a phase where he's aggressive, but at the same time smart.
Mm-hmm.
think that he has to be able to embrace counterpunching and counterpunch with the counterpuncher.
Right.
Counterpunch him. I think that you have to also just be able to take counterpunching away from him. I think that those are things that what we'll put it like this, because everything's a hypothetical, but what we do know is what he does best.
Right.
And listen, it's not only the left hook, but there's a punch before the left hook most of the time. So you got to kind of anticipate the punch before the left hook, because that's a misdirection situation. Get you to focus on this and do that. So I think that, so you have to focus on those things, man. All these probabilities, all these possibilities that I have to create all these scenarios to where when they are presented, because they will come up, he's okay with it. He's not flustered. He's okay. He's feeling good about it. And that's what you have to just keep him thinking, keep his mind prepared for this shot, that shot, the straight punches. Everything he does, because he doesn't only throw the left hook. He has a good right hand, and he has fast and good twitch and fast reaction time. So that's what you got to be prepared for.
Well, I'm sure you guys are, and I'm sure you've worked on everything. And I know you are feeling confident about Errol's preparation for this fight. That's for sure.
Right. We've been working since like the last week of March. So if you can imagine, so people they say the ring rust, yeah, but it's a little different with this because we kind of took the older guy, me being an older guy, or the Floyd Mayweather approach. Like most young guys, they train for 8 to 10 weeks, right? But when you're older guy, you coming through something and working through something, you just train for like 6-7 months. Because what happens is you have to work all those kinks out, get all those cobwebs out, and basically take the grunt of everything. Take those bad days and just add those bad days up, and with everything you do on those bad days, add up, make it to the good day, and just keep building on that. And I think that's what we took. That's the idea we took, is to keep working, keep pushing. So by the time he started camp, he's ripped up. He's like, man, he's only he might be on weight today. I'm telling you, because that's
interesting.
Because I know yesterday he was, a couple over. So I'm just gonna say
that's great.
Right. That's just the true conviction and motivation and dedication of where he's come from. Because you can actually see that from the day he walked in the gym, the stiffness, the movement, the thing that he couldn't do, to today. He just 13 rounds, we kind of tapering off, but no, he's done 15 to 16 rounds really easy. Yeah. So I think that what we will see Saturday is really the best version of Errol Spence, and we'll see Danny Garcia, which I believe is the best version of he and Angel Garcia. I think that they're going to bring the A game. Listen, they always do. These are guys that show up and they show out. So this is a fight for the people. This is like what we back in the day, the old super fights.
Yeah. Big fight for boxing for sure. And those are the kind I know you want to be involved in, and you have been involved in those in recent years. Derrick, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me, and good luck on December 5th.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Al. Thank you. And thanks for the time. I'm very honored to be here with you, a boxing legend. Are you in the Hall of Fame yet? You in the Hall of Fame yet?
I am in the Hall of Fame, yeah.
There we go.
They snuck me in there, where you will be someday.
Listen, man, they didn't have to listen. To be honest, they didn't have to sneak you in there. When you walk to the door, it just opened up automatically. You just slid on in there. You've been in boxing since I was a little bitty kid, watching the fights and everything over time, hearing your voice. It's amazing. It's great.
Well, I appreciate that very much coming from you, that's for sure. And again, best of luck on December 5th.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So Derrick James, of course, as I said, will be in the corner this weekend when his charge, Errol Spence, takes on Danny Garcia. And the man at the microphone, or one of the men at the microphone, is going to be Lennox Lewis, the former heavyweight champion of the world. He'll be calling the fight. And we had a chance to ask Lennox a few questions about the upcoming Garcia-Spence fight. Here it is. Lennox, you are going to be ringside for the fight between Errol Spence and Danny Garcia. And Spence coming back after this long layoff after his accident. I'm just wondering, do you think that Danny Garcia, even though it's not his style, would be super aggressive early in the fight because Spence is coming off that accident?
I don't know. It's a good theory because, you can fight the fight different ways, but it's really how you wage the war, and, I think that may be a mistake, because the Truth wants to prove himself. He knows that everybody's saying, the accident's probably affected him, so they want to see how good he is, if anything's affected by this accident.
Right.
So everybody's going to be paying close attention. And Danny Garcia is, he's a good counter puncher.
Right.
So he's not really going to commit himself too early. He's going to check out the situation. And, he's got a lot of boxing knowledge. So I've seen him do that before. And
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So in a way, it doesn't suit his style to do that. So it would be a departure for him.
Right. And I actually think Errol Spence is going to come after him. He's going to, the way how he fought Porter really surprised me. I'm shocked that he bullied the bully type of thing. And he wasn't really trying to run around the ring, but he did show some good angles and some good combinations. So I think I'm expecting the same. I think he wants to prove himself, and he's going to go right after Danny Garcia.
And, one of the interesting things about this fight, and you're very aware of having the right people in your corner. You had a wonderful relationship with Emmanuel Stewart, which we'll talk about in a second or two. But this fight is unique in that both of the trainers of these fighters, Angel Garcia, of course, Danny's dad, and Derrick James, the trainer of Errol Spence, have been with them for a long time. So they're not rent-a-trainers. They're people that really understand their fighter.
Yeah, and that's very important. It's better to go to battle with the people that that's been around you the longest, so they know how to motivate you. They can tell if anything's going wrong, and the game plan that them guys are gonna play out will be, everybody's gonna be watching. So it's not just the fighters. The corners matter as well, because they're experienced corners, and the information they give to their fighter at the specific times is very important. So, there's a lot to look forward to in this fight. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. And, who doesn't want a good fight? Who doesn't want to see one? We all do.
Sure. How important is this fight to as far as boxing coming back now after the pandemic? This is one of the fights people have focused on.
Yeah, I mean, big fights is what people want, especially checking out Danny Garcia. They want to see how he's going to hold up. This is an important fight for him. Nobody really knows until they get in the ring and see each other fight. Yeah,
we'll see what happens. Well, it's certainly going to be an excellent
What are you
matchup.
saying? What are you saying?
Yeah, listen, I feel like it's a really interesting fight because of the style matchups. As you point out, Errol Spence will be aggressive, and Danny Garcia is a very good counterpuncher. So when you put those two together, and you made the point that Errol Spence maybe wasn't as aggressive as he should have been against Sean Porter, so maybe we'll see more of that.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Well, it's going to be a terrific fight, and you will be ringside calling it on Fox, and we'll look forward to your comments. So we'll see how it plays out this weekend with Danny Garcia and Errol Spence. I know we're all going to be anxious to see that one. And one that we did see, Tripp, was the fight this past weekend with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. in their quote-unquote exhibition match. In an interesting evening of mixing of music and boxing. And YouTubers and all kinds of stuff, not to mention Snoop Dogg. I was supposed to be on hand there, but of course I couldn't go because I had tested positive for COVID. But I watched on TV as many people did, and it was an interesting evening. And Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson fought to what was unofficially called a draw. And our man, Tom Yankello, who, of course, has the world-class boxing channel on YouTube that is so good and who we partner up with, he was in the corner of Roy Jones Jr., exhorting him on and trying to get him to box against Mike Tyson.
How did you have it at home?
If I was scoring it, I think I would have probably given it to Tyson. He seemed a little more aggressive and landed a more telling blows, especially those body shots, which Roy Jones Jr. said everywhere he hit him, he hurt him, even though they had 12-ounce gloves on. So I think I would lean to Tyson in that one. But, you know, it ended up being a draw. And our pal Vinny Pazienza, who we interviewed here, he got in the crosshairs of controversy because he scored it so dramatically for Jones. But, you know, I think the whole point of it was to see these two men in action. The line of the night was issued by Snoop Dogg, who said, it kind of reminded me of two of my uncles fighting at the picnic, which was kind of funny. And interestingly, he was one of the stars of the evening. Everybody got a kick out of Snoop Dogg. But my son pointed out that had I commentated with Snoop Dogg, it would have been the highlight of his life. So perhaps in the future, down the road in one of these. But it was fun, and everybody came away with people seemed to enjoy it. You know, in a different evening of boxing, to be sure, along with some entertainment, and everybody had a good time. And
did you feel that Roy Jones Jr. he had fought much more recently than Tyson? Did he show Tyson some things, or what was your analysis of it?
No, you know, I think actually the irony is Tyson looked fresher. Many people thought Tyson would burn out after a couple rounds. He didn't. You know, he was fresher during a longer portion of the fight. And Roy was I think physically was kind of had a few more issues in terms of stamina and all the rest. And of course, he got banged away in the body pretty good. But Roy had his moments of boxing well in there, and you know, so it was entertaining to people, and the whole presentation of the evening ended up being something that people got a kick out of. So at the end of the day, that's good. And as I said, Tom Yankello is there. And by the way, go check out Tom's YouTube channel, World Class Boxing, and you'll see some great videos. We of course got a brief chance here to hear from Lennox Lewis, but we will have an extended interview of Lennox Lewis coming up on our next show, and you'll get to hear more from the former heavyweight champion of the world about his career and how he sees boxing, and we'll get a chance to visit with him a little bit more. So my thanks to Derrick James for joining us. Thanks to Lennox Lewis. Thanks to Trip Mitchell, as always, for his fine work. Thank you for not only joining us, but for sending us questions. Please send us questions at Al Bernstein on Twitter. You can ask me anything you want, and I will be happy to answer it. We'll see you next time.